The Obama administration may take targeted action in Iraq. But what will that mean to the already beleaguered Christian population in the region? JOSEPH KASSAB of the Iraqi Christian Advocacy Institute will give us an update. And he's the chief political anchor and host of Special Report on Fox News. But it was his son's battle with congenital heart disease that gave him new perspective on his life and faith. Author of the new book, Special Heart, Bret Baier joins us in studio for an intimate interview. And finally, it's been 10 years since we lost poet and peace activist Mattie Stepanek. His mother, Dr. JENI STEPANEK, returns to the show to talk about Mattie's message and coping with life's greatest challenges. The World Over Live begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. JOSEPH KASSAB, Bret Baier, and Dr. JENI STEPANEK are straight ahead. I also have some great news I've been saving for you, so stay tuned for that. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet at Raymond Arroyo. I'll be live tweeting throughout the show. Or drop us an email at worldover@EWTN.com. Let's get started. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. President Barack Obama announced his response to the crisis in Iraq. Sunni militants have taken control of several Iraqi cities and towns. The president told the White House press corps that the U.S. will deploy 300 military advisors, boost intelligence assets, and left open the possibility of airstrikes on specific militant targets. He will also seek diplomatic solutions with willing partners in the region. However, the president affirmed repeatedly that U.S. combat troops will not be returning to Iraq. Militants of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria have seized the key cities of Mosul, Tikrit, and now control a contiguous swath of the Fertile Crescent from the edge of Baghdad to the outskirts of Aleppo in Syria. At least one Iraqi bishop is cautioning against international intervention. Archbishop Jean Sleiman of Baghdad told aid to the church in need that ISIS must be countered by Iraqi forces, and that a strong consensus within the country is required to avoid a tragic outcome. More about this latest on the Iraqi crisis and what it means for the Christian population there in our next segment. Meanwhile, 3 nights of jihadist attacks in Kenya have left at least 58 dead. According to witnesses on Sunday, armed terrorists went door to door in a coastal town near the Somali border, demanding to know if the men inside were Muslim and if they spoke Somali. Gunfire greeted any unsatisfactory answers. The wife of one victim said her husband was shot in the head and chest after saying he and his family were Christian. Al-Shabaab, the Al-Qaeda-linked group, claimed responsibility for the attacks, which continued on Monday and Tuesday. 2 hotels and many vehicles were also set ablaze. 5 arrests have been made in connection with the killings. And a suspected Boko Haram bomber killed at least 14 people on Tuesday at a World Cup viewing site in northeast Nigeria. At least 26 more were wounded. Unrelated to the attack, authorities said they've arrested nearly 500 suspected militants, including a terror kingpin in southeastern Nigeria. There is still, sadly, no progress to report on the 276 abducted schoolgirls. We'll keep you posted. On Tuesday, a federal judge in Mobile, Alabama, tossed out EWTN's claim that requiring employers to include contraception in their health care coverage is unconstitutional. U.S. District Judge Callie Grenade ruled that the Catholic network's religious freedom was not being infringed by the federal HHS contraception mandate, requiring it to provide contraception coverage, including abortifacients and sterilizations. EWTN Chairman and CEO Michael Warsaw called the decision extremely dismissive and very troubling. The network has appealed the decision to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta. Enforcement of the mandate begins July 1st. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court will decide in days the much-anticipated Hobby Lobby case, which will determine whether a for-profit company with religious objections can be forced to offer contraception coverage per the Obamacare mandate. It appears religious organizations could soon be battling the Obama administration on a new front. According to the Huffington Post and other sources, the president will soon sign an executive order denying federal contracts to companies and nonprofits that would discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. Under such an executive order, Catholic hospitals, schools, charities, and other organizations that adhere to church teaching might be excluded from receiving federal funds. We'll continue following that story. Police in Phoenix have made an arrest in connection with last week's murder of Father Kenneth Walker. 54-year-old Gary Moran, an ex-convict with a history of violence and drug abuse, was arrested Sunday night on suspicion of first-degree murder, burglary, and armed robbery, among other charges. Father Walker, who was 28 years old and ordained for the priestly fraternity of St. Peter just a year ago, had interrupted a late-night robbery in the rectory of his parish near the Arizona state capitol. Moran had beaten and wrestled a gun away from Father Joseph Terra, the church pastor. Father Terra blacked out during the attack, and when he came to, he found Father Walker had been shot. The young priest received last rites from Father Terra at the scene. He later died at the hospital. Father Walker will be laid to rest this weekend in Kansas. May he rest in peace. And a week after Pope Francis had canceled 2 full days' worth of appointments due to what was described as a mild indisposition, the Vatican has announced that the Pope will lighten his summer schedule. During July, the Holy Father will not celebrate his typical public daily Mass at the Vatican's St. Martha's Guest House, and all Wednesday general audiences for the month have been canceled. Concerns about the Pope's health began surfacing in the media last month after the Pope canceled a fairly simple event in the suburbs of Rome, owing to fatigue. This past week, the Vatican press office assured reporters that the Pope's physical condition was nothing to worry about. And Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen is another step closer to beatification. Vatican-approved theologians have affirmed the apparent miracle attributed to the intercession of the Emmy-winning American preacher. The miracle involved the revival of a California infant who had appeared to be stillborn. In March, a panel of physicians found that there was no medical explanation for the child's recovery. The purported miracle still requires the subsequent approvals of the Congregation of the Causes of Saints and Pope Francis. If decreed by the Pope, the beatification would be held in Archbishop Sheen's hometown, Peoria, Illinois. No timeline has been set, and we'll be following this story as we have all these years. And coming up before the end of the show, the exclusive cover reveal of my new children's book, Kerman Derman and the Relic of Perilous Falls. It won't hit bookstores until September, but I'll tell you how you can get a free signed early reader's edition. But you have to stay tuned. The big reveal is straight ahead. And when we return, the chaos in Iraq is worsening and the plight of Christians in the region remains dire. JOSEPH KASSAB, president of the Iraqi Christian Advocacy and Empowerment Institute, will be here to tell us what's happening on the ground in Iraq when the World of Relied continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. With Islamic radicals continuing to occupy Mosul in Iraq, the already shrinking Christian population is under renewed assault. With Sharia law being imposed, Christians are being openly persecuted or driven out of Iraq. What can be done to protect that population in the region, and what might renewed U.S. involvement in Iraq achieve? My guest this evening is the president and founder of the Iraqi Christian Advocacy and Empowerment Institute in Michigan. He's been in constant contact with those in Iraq. Please welcome back to the program JOSEPH KASSAB. Joseph, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me, what is the situation? What are you hearing from those on the ground? I got some emails and things earlier this week, and they are simply terrifying.
Well, that is very much true. The situation at this time in Mosul and the surrounding area is very chaotic, volatile, and we just don't know at this time how bad it is, because there is no phone, there is no internet, there is no social media services, and it is very, very hard to get to know exactly what's happening on the ground. But when we talk to our people, they are very, very afraid of what's going on, and they are asking us as people in the diaspora to help them in any way we can in order to provide aid and protection for them.
What is happening? I mean, this group, this ISIS group, this is sort of an al-Qaeda offshoot. They broke away from al-Qaeda, but they have taken over large swaths of Iraq now. What is their attitude toward the Christian population?
Well, I need to say that their attitude at this time, especially in Mosul and the other areas that they already occupied, is that they are implementing the extreme Islamic rules on everybody, especially the minorities, the women, the minors. And also anything un-Islamic has been either destroyed or removed. And also anything is Sunni for some reason. They are Sunni or Shia, they are removing it. So we don't know exactly what they are after. But I must re-emphasize one fact, and that is these people are much, much brutal than the al-Qaeda itself that we know of.
Wow. Now, but wait a minute. I was told, and all these reports tell us, that these are Sunni militants. You're saying Sunni paraphernalia and identification is being removed?
Well, it seems to me that they are Sunnis, but it looks like they are completely very extremist Sunnis, and they are not like any other Sunnis, and that's why they are killing many, many people from Mosul who are Muslims. Some of them are Sunnis, and some of them are Shias. So they are not differentiating at this time. Anybody is opposing to them, end up removed. That is the thing they are doing at this time.
What should be the reaction of the United States? There are those saying the United States has to send more troops. The president has not ruled out a targeted military attack of some sort, depending on the need. Your thoughts? We have Bishop Slayman on the ground saying, no military intrusion at all. What would you say? What are the people you're in contact with saying?
Well, we just finished talking to the White House in a private conference on this issue, and I want to say that the White House is on it, but the thing is we need to see President Obama do a lot more to protect the Iraqis and mainly the minorities in there. This is something that we're expecting to happen very soon. It seems to me that the U.S. administration is going to do a surgical operations more than a general operation, and maybe it will be good for the time being. But we really need to see a lot more. The people who are the weakest among the weak are the minorities, are the Christians, and they are very much hurt. 1/2 of the population, they already moved to Kurdistan area, to safer area, and also to the surrounding villages of Mosul. And we are afraid that the next target will be these villages that basically are minority villages, which are filled with the Christians. This is something we have a lot of concern to.
So very quickly, are you in support of military action, or do you agree with Bishop Slayman that no military action should be brought back into the region because it will only create more chaos?
We are in support of any action that takes out this particular group, stop them from their aggression, and also we are for an action by the United States administration to provide aid, quick aid, and protection for those who are unable to protect themselves, like the Christians.
Give people a sense of what we're dealing with here. We once had more than 1 million Christians in this region. That number dropped anywhere between 400,000 to 200,000. In the last few years, we've seen tens of thousands evacuating the area and leaving their homeland. Is this, as Nina Shea has written this week, are we seeing the end game in the extermination of Christians in Iraq?
Most likely we see that. Nonetheless, we provide a quick assistance to these people. It is happening. It is taking place. There is no doubt about it. We had in Iraq over 450 churches functional. Now, after the war and during these days, we have less than 50 churches are operational.
Wow.
You believe it or not, last Sunday, there was no mass in Mosul. There was no mass in Mosul, and this has happened since 1600 years ago. So believe it or not, this is something that we are very much worried about. People are fleeing in droves, aimless, and they don't know what to do. And thank God there are people who are receiving them in the surrounding villages and in Kurdistan to support them and give them at least some safety until they compose themselves.
What are you asking people here to do? What can people do in the United States, in Europe, and our viewers even in Africa?
Yes, unfortunately, the people outside Iraq, mainly in the Western Hemisphere, they don't know very much about who the Christians of the Iraq are, who the Christians of the Middle East are. It is very important for them to get to know who these Christians are. These are biblical Christians. These are ancient Christians, started with the cradle of Christianity, and therefore they should be saved. Therefore, we are asking them to be involved, to speak up about these atrocities against them, and convince their governments that they should be providing help and protection for this community. It is really important. We're asking them and we plead to them not to leave their brothers, the Christians, alone.
JOSEPH KASSAB, we thank you so much. We will be in touch with you in the days ahead, and we hope people will keep this situation in their prayers and certainly reach out to this beleaguered and tortured community. Thank you so much, JOSEPH. Host of Fox News' Special Report and author of the new book, Special Heart, Bret Baier, is here to talk about the toughest story he ever encountered and how it changed him. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. He is the chief political anchor at Fox News and the host of Special Report, which for the last 65 months has dominated its time slot in all of cable news. At the same time, Bret Baier and his wife Amy have been facing an even greater challenge at home. It began the day their son Paul was born 7 years ago, followed by some shocking news. Their terrifying and inspiring journey is chronicled in a new book, Special Heart, a journey of faith, hope, courage, and love. Please welcome to the program, Bret Baier. Bret, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, tell me what happens. It's the high point of your married life. You have this beautiful baby boy, Paul, and a nurse recognizes a coloring, a bluish coloring that she's not totally comfortable with.
Right. In fact, it's even more amazing than that. So we had this idyllic 24 hours with our new child, our firstborn, first son. So we had that blissful time in a hospital room that a lot of people can remember. And then the first nurse actually has a seizure, unfortunately. She was fine, but she's moved off a rotation. We get this second nurse, Beth Kennedy. We call her our angel. She notices that Paul is turning pale, and she wants to put him in for some tests. They thought it was a bacterial infection. Turns out they call in a cardiologist, and he has 5 serious congenital heart defects. The cardiologist happened to be going by the hospital at the time. He was really one of the top in the world.
Wow.
And he comes in and tells us that he has to have surgery, really complex surgery in the first days, or he's going to die.
Oh.
So that moment was, as you can imagine, earth-shattering.
Traumatic.
Yeah.
And I mean, your wife is, I can only imagine what a mother is going through at this moment.
Yeah.
And you're working, I mean, you're a White House correspondent in the midst of all this. How do you hold it together? What do you do? Do you just sort of say, all of my focus is going to be on this child and his survival?
Yes, but before we got there, there were some dark days. I mean, I'll be honest with you. We went down. We had to wait 12 days for a surgeon to come back from overseas. And Amy, she collapsed in Children's National. She became the oldest patient in Children's National. And we went to the emergency room. I went with her as we're rolling down in this gurney, and she's passed out. And we came to the point, she came to, she was fine. We said, listen, we're going to focus on prayer. We're going to focus on family, and we're going to focus on being positive, and being the parents that Paul needs us to be. So we came up with this mantra at the end of every day. We'd give each other a teary high five and say, we're one day closer to getting Paul home. And we just kind of turned it around at that moment.
I mean, it is, and you narrate in the book the stages of, first of all, it's great because it's a love story at the beginning. It's really about you and Amy and how you meet. And then you're quickly drafted into, you know, the guerrilla exercise in parenting, something all of us sort of tremble even considering.
Yeah.
Your son goes through this first open heart surgery, and then they say he needs a stomach surgery.
Yeah.
And you were really ticked off.
I was. I was on the phone. I was at work. I get a call, and Amy said, listen, don't freak out.
Oh, gosh.
But we're at the hospital. He needs a stomach surgery. It's not related to his heart. And I said, wait a second. The solution to everything is not surgery.
Yeah,
Can we get another opinion?
Yeah, exactly.
But we made it through. So Paul had 3 open heart surgeries, 7 angioplasties, and that stomach surgery. He turned 7 at the end of June. And Raymond, he's doing fantastic.
Yeah, 7 years old.
He's growing like a weed. He has a lot of energy. I joked with his surgeon a couple weeks ago. I said, you know, last time you could have turned it down just a hair, you know.
How did your faith get you through this? I know you said those dark days, and we can all imagine being in that moment. Obviously, you're Catholic. You decided to baptize him in the ICU early on. Tell me about that.
We wanted to put him on God's scoreboard early. And to be honest with you, we didn't know if Paul was going to make it. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth. And it was just important for us to have that ceremony and to be in that place. And there was nothing fancy about it, but it was the most beautiful baptism I'd ever been to.
What did it teach you about the power of prayer? So many people, I was on this email chain, I don't even know how I got looped in. Suddenly I was getting these updates every day from you. Thousands of people had to be looped in.
It was amazing. I sent it to, you know, friends, they sent it to friends, and it kept on going. And before you knew it, I was getting hundreds of prayers coming in from around the world. Somebody in the Vatican, a priest there emailed me, and I was reading these to Amy, and we were honestly, Raymond, lifted up by that. And for anybody who doubts the power of prayer, well, I think you should read this book, because it changed us, it turned us, and helped us get through everything. Everybody doesn't, you know, believe now what we believe, but I tell people, however you're going to get there, get to the place where you imagine that the tough time is over. For us, prayer was the vehicle that got us there.
And that idea of trusting, it might have come from Brit Hume or Tony Snow.
Tony Snow.
Trust the doctors, trust God. And just, you really don't have any other choice at that point.
I mean, you have to give it up. It is not you. You know, my job, I tried to out-hustle everybody, outwork everybody. I could not out-hustle this deal. I wanted to be the one on that gurney instead of my son. But, you know, you mentioned Tony Snow. He, in the middle of cancer treatment, was emailing me all the time with prayers and support throughout that.
Yeah, no, he was amazing. He's a great guy. You talk in the book about the most recent heart surgery, his third. was probably the hardest because he could ask you questions and you had to sort of walk him through it. What was that like? And he's not at the end yet, right? I mean,
No.
Paul needs others as he grows, as the heart grows.
Yeah, and he's growing fast. So he may have one other open heart surgery. We hope that's it. And probably some angioplasties along the way. But that last one was the toughest because you had to get him to own it. It was scary. You know, he was asking mortality questions about could he die? And you have to be honest, but you also have to say, listen, God has a plan for you. This is going to work out. Before you knew it, he did own it. And we brought his cardiologist into his kindergarten classroom, and he started essentially holding a press conference with the kids.
You were the press secretary?
Yeah, I was.
Yes, go ahead.
What was the toughest part? He said, the medicine's yucky. Okay, next. You know, and then he lifted up his shirt and he showed his scar. He owns it now.
There was a question he asked you, and I'd love for you to relate your answer to him. He said, why do I have to go through all this heart stuff when the kids in my class don't? You said what to him? I love this answer.
Yeah, it was about 2 in the morning, last angioplasty. And he said that to me, and I scrambled. And I said, buddy, God has a plan for you. He's just testing you. And you are passing the test with flying colors. You're going to have an amazing life. And he said, okay, Daddy, I love you. And went back to bed.
I love it.
You know, I think it's amazing to see the resilience in kids.
Yep.
But they need some guidance. They need to know that you're in their corner.
Well, I also love the way you frame this story. It's also within the love of a family. And even though that family is stressed, and I'm sure this put an enormous stress on your marriage, I can only imagine.
It actually brought us together. Some
Really?
marriages, it drives apart. We found that when one of us was down, the other was up, and we got closer because of it.
Well, and that love he can feel, and you sense that in the book. It's sort of in between the verses here, that as stressful as this was for him, Mom and Dad were there and they were with him every step of the way. And that's a beautiful kind of subplot to the story, I thought, as I read through it.
Thank you.
How did this change the way you see all of this? You know, we're in the middle of this bubble, this fishbowl of D.C., and imagine, you know, we're just inches away from the levers of power and it's all right here. How did it shape your daily life on the job?
It gave me perspective. It gave me this perspective that if there's bickering on one side or the other up on Capitol Hill, there are families dealing with bigger things out there, and we need to remember that every day. It also gave me an appreciation for God and the church and how that factors into everything. It gave me an appreciation of the amazing medicine that's going around, despite whatever you hear about, you know, the bureaucracy of healthcare.
Right.
The amazing stuff that's going on around our country, medicine-wise.
Did it sensitize you as a reporter to the depth and importance of your coverage of the Affordable Care Act?
Definitely. Definitely, which made it really important that, you know, covering all sides of that. Listen, I sat next to a family in that waiting room that didn't have any insurance. I sat next to another family that didn't speak English. They got the same treatment from the same surgeon that my son did. Because Children's National is based on charity and they fund things. Not every hospital is like that. So it did give me an appreciation of that issue broadly.
I also love that all the proceeds of this book, all of them, are
100%.
going to pediatric research everywhere or just at Children's?
There's a number of organizations around the country, and frankly, if there's some out there, we're gathering more all the time. But every dollar of my proceeds will go to various nonprofits. And there's amazing things happening, Raymond. There's 1 out of 100 kids in our country is born with a congenital heart defect. 1 out of 100.
No, I didn't realize that until I read the book.
And half of those have to have a surgery or procedure in the first 6 months.
Are you concerned that those specialists, the surgeon that worked on your son, that you saw at Children's, that those specialists are disappearing? They're leaving the field, or they're going, you know, offshore because of the situation that's been created with the health regime as it now is unveiling itself?
Yeah, that's a big concern, and we report on that side of it too. Privately in my life, I do everything to fund this hospital to make sure that they don't lose a single doctor.
Right.
But other hospitals around the country, you know, it's charity in our country people forget how much we actually give to hospitals and those organizations.
No, it's a good country, good people in it. I want to shift for a moment to Iraq. You made 23 trips there.
To there and Afghanistan, so 12 in Iraq and
12 in Iraq and then into the region. Looking at what's happening now, we're seeing a wholesale collapse of the civil society. We're seeing these Islamist groups coming in and undoing, really, all that was accomplished over the last decade or so. Was it a mistake to go in, considering what's happening now?
Clearly, there are many people who say it was in the prism of post 9/11, and to hear, you know, not only the Bush administration but intelligence agencies in 17 other countries, Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill at that time, there was a pitch made to that it was the right thing to do. In retrospect, there are a lot of people on all sides saying, this is, you know, not the thing that we should have done. I think now it is really sad to watch those cities go down one by one. And I can imagine for service members who lost buddies in some of those cities, patrolling them.
And limbs.
And fought there, it must be excruciatingly hard.
Yeah, and that Christian community, those Chaldeans there.
Throughout the region, really.
This is the cradle of Christianity. It is obliterated. I mean, those people are gone, and what's left is being...
It's something that doesn't get covered enough. I mean, that whole persecution element of that region is something that is an interesting story.
It's terrifying. You did an interview this week with Hillary Clinton, tried to pry open some of the answers, particularly on Benghazi. She is sticking to this narrative that it was a video that launched this thing. Were you stunned that she wasn't a bit more forthcoming, given what we know now?
I was stunned by some of the answers that she said at the beginning. It was the fog of war, and she careened from one thing to the other. That was a new answer. She also was the one who put the press release out that night that Benghazi was the result of this video. I think, you know, I did a step-by-step kind of questioning. And I think some of that will come up in this Benghazi committee later on this fall.
Final question, why did you write this book? Why did you feel now was the time to write this book?
I looked back at these emails, and we gathered them together, and I read them. And I said, there is a backbone here for a book, I think, that hopefully can inspire people. You know, everybody has something, some challenge, something. Not necessarily a kid in the hospital, but something. And this is how we got through our something. And hopefully it helps people. I mean, on this book tour, there were people coming up crying, telling us their stories. And it was really touching for Amy and I to be able to do that.
Well, it's a source of hope, and I also love that again, it's your relationship with your wife that sort of frames the book. And that bond you feel sustaining your son through these difficult passages, but he seems to have come out on the other side, a fantastic, great little boy. So we certainly wish you the best, and thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Raymond.
Great to have you.
Appreciate it.
Special Heart, a journey of faith, hope, courage, and love by Bret Baier is available at bookstores everywhere and online. Be sure to catch Special Report with Bret Baier on Fox News Channel every weeknight at 6 p.m. Eastern. When we return, Dr. JENI STEPANEK is here to talk about the life and legacy of her son, poet and peace activist Mattie Stepanek. He passed away 10 years ago this week. The important event this weekend to recall and extend his message when the World of Her Life continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. It is hard to believe that it has been 10 years since Mattie Stepanek, the prolific poet, peace advocate, and philosopher, passed away at the age of 14. During his short life, he captured the hearts of the well-known and the voiceless. From Oprah Winfrey to Larry King to Jimmy Carter to countless others, all were touched by his message and the faith that shined through it. His mother, Jenny, began a foundation to extend his message, and she herself is a courageous example of living and loving beyond disability and loss. Here to talk about Mattie Stepanek's lasting legacy and his deep spirituality. I'm joined by Mattie's mom, Dr. JENI STEPANEK, and also by the director of the Bethlehem House for Adults with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, Dolores Wilson. Thank you both for being here. I want to start with you, JENI. You've been here so often. This has to be a bittersweet milestone for you.
Yes.
What are your thoughts as you look back now on 10 years after Mattie's passing? What endures for you? What glistens brightly?
I think what glistens for me would be that the message that he shared during a very brief lifespan continues to have relevance today. Not just inspiring other people, but I now anchor my life around this message of hope and peace. Mattie taught us not just how to live well, how to live reflecting God's presence, but also something about dying well and reflecting God's presence in death and beyond.
Well, if you had to summarize that message, that heart song that he spent those 3 years, it's unbelievable, it was only 3 years that he was really in the public eye, really known and traveling and giving speeches on talk shows. If you had to summarize that message, what would it be?
He spent 10 years writing and sharing the message and 3 years in the spotlight. And it's a twofold message. One is we're each created with a heart song, some unique purpose. And that comes from God, that God doesn't just throw people on earth. There is a plan for each of us. What Mattie believed his heart song was, his purpose, was to share a message of hope and peace for the world. A message that's hope is real. It's not living in denial or ignorance. Peace is possible if we could start at the beginning and understand what peace is and what it's not. And that life is worthy even amid the burdens that have to be balanced in with all the blessings.
Dolores Wilson, how did you first meet Mattie Stepanek? Tell me about that first meeting.
The meeting was at a high school in southern Maryland, and I took my whole community down to hear Mattie speak to a group of teenagers. And he was younger then, and it was mesmerizing. And our friends with developmental disabilities were just awed by him. And after it was over, we waited because we had to meet Mattie personally. It was like a movie star. And so we just thought that was the greatest. And that was the beginning of a relationship because we kind of followed every book he wrote, every place where he was or going to be. And he just had a manner that was compelling for any audience that he was addressing. It didn't matter what their ages were.
Tell me about the Catholicism and his faith and how you saw that working its way out of that message and what that message meant to those particularly with disabilities. I'll give both of you a chance at that one.
Mattie had a deep sense of both spirituality and a commitment to Catholicism. He was confirmed at a very young age. You remember Cardinal Hickey confirmed him when he was 8 years old, not as a child with a disability, but as a child who had prepared for confirmation and that was spiritually ready, according to Cardinal Hickey. And then Mattie began lecturing and serving as a catechist. He worked with 2nd graders and 6th graders. Mattie, his Catholicism, he had this friendship with God, not just a relationship, an actual friendship. And Mattie was literally strengthened by the Eucharist. The last thing Mattie asked for before he died was to receive the Eucharist, to prepare himself for heaven.
I want to share with both of you and with the audience something he wrote. And JENI, you shared this with me. This was from his diary, 5/30 of 1999. And this was the day he was confirmed. Now, this is an 8-year-old boy, remember. And he writes, he was asked various questions, which is usual at a confirmation. And he said, I did not just offer the answers we learned from reading books and discussing doctrine and theology and catechism in class. I answered from my heart. I shared the book answers, but also how each answer affected my heart and my life and my spirit. Later, the cardinal asked him, why did you choose the name Jude Thaddeus as your confirmation name? And he says, I chose Jude Thaddeus as my name. He's the patron saint of hopeless situations, which is what my life seems like sometimes. And the name Thaddeus means loving and friendly, which is what I try to be at all times. I told Cardinal Hickey that I wanted my life to be remembered as a gift of hope. St. Jude Thaddeus helps us get through times that seem hopeless. I would like to help people understand the very real gift of hope, that hope is not ignoring your problems or pretending that challenges don't exist or even wishing for something that may or may not change. Hope is just an attitude that grows in our hearts and spirits and that helps us get through whatever problem or challenge or joy might present itself to us. Cardinal Hickey came down from the altar and hugged me and blessed me. He told the congregation he'd never met a person, not even an adult, a child, or a teen, who understood life and God and this message of hope in such a profound way. He told me later that I was a messenger of hope. I told him that I have known that my reason for being in life, or my heart song, was to be a messenger of hope and happiness for others since I was very little. Dolores, your thoughts on this, what it means to people, all of us, but particularly with those facing disability or a disease that is grave?
I think that our friends with disabilities loved him so much because he was able to give that message of hope. And they accepted the fact that their life journey, some of them, not all of them, may have a different kind of ending sooner than they anticipated. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't a time to think about that because Mattie was there, and Mattie brought this fun, loving gift that he also possessed. The childlikeness in him, and yet the profundity of his words and the power that he had to share the depth of his own spirituality with God, which is what Jenny has said. I have even written pretty much the same words that she has just said. Absolutely.
Jenny, he did have that eternal perspective, and for one so young, that is such a rare gift, and that too is a gift of hope. Did he always have that sort of, I almost want to call it an otherworldly appreciation of the limits of life, and yet how long eternal life was?
I believe he did. I don't remember a time that he did not have this perspective of mortality intertwining with spirituality. As a I'm talking a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old. He understood prayer and heaven in a way that was beyond his years. And I know that's a cliche, but it's really true. Now, he did have times where he sometimes was quite frustrated. He didn't live with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
There were times he did struggle with the reality that his purpose was one that was going to involve a short amount of time and a lot of suffering. But he accepted that, he embraced that. So he would say the most deep things at ages 2, 3, and 4 that some of them actually concerned me as a mother. You wonder, where are these things coming from?
Yeah.
Because they're not things we were talking about at home, and not things that he was hearing at school. So yes, I do believe that that's just something he came in the world with and remained with him and went back with him.
He says something here about you in this little diary entry I came across. He says, my mom has taught me that while there are many, many things in life that are not a choice, our attitude is always a choice. We can have feelings of anger, or sadness, or joy, or whatever, based on things that we may or may not have a choice in, but how we reflect those feelings into our life and our future and onto others, that is our attitude, and that reflection is our choice.
Yes. I taught him that from when he was very young. When he was 2.5, his brother died, and that was really hard for him. One, because at that age, you don't really understand death, but you understand something's changed and there's a loss. And this is a child who has this friendship with God already at this young age. Trying to put together, if heaven's wonderful, why aren't we all there?
Right.
and just trying to make sense of all of it. And so sometimes he would get sad or angry or confused, and so I would talk to him about feelings. You can't choose them, but you can choose what you do next, and that's an attitude. And his whole message that lives on today, you asked me, what is the glimmer?
Yeah.
The glimmer is that this message is so, it starts out abstract, and he whittles it down to doable choices, anchored in deliberately chosen attitudes and words and thoughts and actions. And that's what the whole, everything that he writes, is it just grows from that one spring of hope is real, peace is possible, and that you choose to believe these things.
Obviously, since the last time we saw you here on the show, your breathing is more labored. You wanted to explain it at the beginning of the show. I said, why don't we wait and do it as we get into the segment. Is it harder for you these days, and how are you coping?
I've had a rough year medically, a lot of infections and a virus that led to a progression of the underlying disease, which is most noticeable in decrease in lung function. And it's actually brought me back. It's interesting, we're 10 years out, and I find myself sitting and reading Mattie's material again, looking for hope and peace and acceptance that God did not plan this for me, but God has a plan in this for me. And that's how Mattie thought. So I'm finding my inspiration from my own son as I deal with whatever is out there for me.
I want to ask both of you, we had Bret Baier just on the show in the last segment, and he was talking about his son, who was also at Children's Medical Center here in D.C., has gone through a series of heart operations. What do you say to the parents who are facing situations like this, where their child either is in the midst of a health crisis or has a disease that is weakening their bodies? Parents often feel so powerless. What do you give them as far as advice or a glimmer of faith that can carry them through?
I think first you sit with them and be compassionate. You feel it. You try to feel it the same as they do, because sometimes there are no words.
Yeah.
And we can sit and say, let us pray now. They may not want to pray. You can tell them God is good, and they may think, no, why did this happen to me?
Right.
And so I think it's where you are at that particular time frame in their life. But to be with a person at a time like that has much more extension of effect than telling them, let's talk about God right
Jenny?
now.
I agree completely. I try not to offer advice. If it's relevant or helpful, I will share. If somebody asks, I'll share some of my situation. But even sharing your own situation, that's not helpful very often to a parent in that moment, because that moment in their child is what matters most, not my experience, not my lessons, not my advice. So being present and being in prayer for them, next to them, that's often the best.
I love how you've taken Mattie's example and he took your example, and it has melded together and it goes on, and it is this, it's courageous is what it is, and it is, we have a message to continue, we're here for a purpose, and that goes on despite the challenges, despite even death.
Yes.
It goes on. And that is the thing that has always struck me reading your biography of Mattie. Really, it's your story as well as his. Which is one of the most beautiful books I think we have. You should read it. It's life-affirming, beautiful, a gorgeous book. He writes something that I want to end on. In this same diary entry, this is an 8-year-old child. He writes, "When I die, I still want to be a peacemaker. I will be alive in heaven and do what I would have done being alive on earth. I will ask God to let me speak to the spirits who are thinking in purgatory and share my heart song with them. Then they will understand being at peace with their spirit and be able to live in heaven and see the face of God. Your thoughts on that?
I didn't read that until after he died, but it fits with so many poems that he wrote. Mattie wrote again and again and again that when he died, his purpose in heaven was to continue serving God as a messenger. And in fact, as he lay dying, he didn't want to leave me. He didn't want to leave Earth because he loved life, despite all the suffering. But he was excited, honestly, sincerely excited, because he knew he was going to get to serve God and talk to people and help people see the face of God. As he would say, see the face of God so soon, by thinking about hope and realizing how much God is with us.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful message. Dolores, anything to add?
I am just remembering Jenny telling me, I think it was the day he died, you called me, or I know we talked about it, and he had asked you, did I do everything that God wants me to do? And that has been, I hope I have that question when it comes to be my time. The inspiration he's given us is enormous for
No, those last words, I gave a speech, and I sometimes read those last words because they are a great appraisal for all of us. And, you know, have I done enough? Have, you know,
Will it last?
Yeah, and then the last, yes.
Yes. And I wonder, I sit and think on that yes. And I want to know, was he saying yes to me, yes to God, yes to life? Was he? I won't know until I see him again. But he said it. This is a child who had spent 3 months broken. He didn't even have enough breath at the end to get a word out. It had been several days that he couldn't get anything out. And then suddenly, just loudly, he said yes and smiled. And that was his last word.
Awesome. Tell me about the Mattie Stepanek Peace Day initiative before we conclude here, and tell people about the big anniversary celebration we're planning.
Great. Well, the Peace Day initiative is just, we're asking President Obama to declare Mattie's birthday, July 17th, a National Day of Peace. Mattie Stepanek Peace Day. It has the support of congressmen, senators, so far 1,700 people that have signed our online petition on mattieonline.com. And people have asked, why do we need a national holiday when there's an international one? And the answer is because you got to start at home. You don't start by ending wars in other countries. We have to start and teach our children about kindness and not bullying, and we need to trust and nurture each other here at home. And why anchored to Mattie? Because Mattie, when you hear his name, when you read about him, he reminds you of peace. He makes you stop. And he took that abstract concept and made it achievable. It's not about ending war. It's about beginning peace here. And so that's why. So hoping your viewers will join us.
And senators and congressmen and world leaders and media personalities have all signed on to the petition. It's at mattieonline.com. You can find out more there. Now, to mark the 10th anniversary of Mattie Stepanek's passing, the Mattie J.T. Stepanek Guild, now this is full disclosure, I am a founding member of the Guild. It's to focus on his cause and potential cause for sainthood. We will be hosting a Mass of Thanksgiving and Remembrance on Sunday, June 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern at the Franciscan Monastery here in Washington, D.C., appropriately on the Feast of Corpus Christi. All are invited to attend, and I have info up on my website, raymondarroyo.com. It's there at the bottom of the website. If you don't know where the Franciscan Monastery is, you can find some help there. Jenny, Dolores, thank you both for being here.
Raymond.
We'll see you on Sunday.
See you Sunday.
Well, that is all the time we have until next week. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com on the left-hand side of the site. Now for that bit of news I teased earlier. The cover of the new children's series I've been working on for several years. The first book of the series, Kerman Durman and the Relic of Perilous Falls, releases September 8th everywhere. It is a supernatural thriller for the 11-year-old in all of us. I'll be sharing more details in the days ahead about the book. I just posted the cover on my Facebook and Twitter pages. If you retweet that image or repost it, I may choose you as one of the handful of people to receive an early reader of the entire book. You have 2 weeks to tweet or Facebook the cover. I'll be giving away 10, maybe a few more, signed early readers. Be the first to experience Kerman Durman and his incredible adventures. The cover is online right now. And be sure to tune in next week for my exclusive interview with Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal and country music superstar Colin Ray. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. We'll see you next time. Bye now.